They say every store hides something behind its shelves. I found mine inside a children's toy box. I used to work the night shift at a department store called Bright Mart, tucked away on the edge of a small Arizona town. Nothing ever really happened there, at least not during the day. But after dark, when the last customers left and the automatic doors slid shut, the building changed. The air felt heavier. The buzzing lights seemed louder, and every creak echoed like someone walking just behind you. Most nights I was alone in my section, straightening toys and restocking shelves. It was boring work, quiet, predictable. That's why what happened still feels impossible. When you spend every night surrounded by innocence, surrounded by dolls, bikes, and toy trucks, you never expect to find something truly horrifying. It started when management decided to reorganize the toy department. They said it had fallen into chaos, which was putting it mildly. Boxes were ripped open, packaging shredded, parts missing. A graveyard of forgotten fun. And guess who got assigned to fix it? Me. At first I didn't mind. The toy section felt nostalgic, like an escape from reality. I'd spend hours rearranging dolls and board games, imagining the laughter of kids who'd never see the mess behind the shelves. But that night, the laughter in my imagination was replaced by something else. The lights above aisle 12 flickered twice. Then the hum of the air vents cut out. The silence that followed was thick, like the entire store was holding its breath. That's when I noticed the Power Rider box. It was pushed far back against the wall, half hidden behind a stack of scooters. The cardboard was warped and sun-bleached, the logo nearly invisible. But one corner had a dark, wet stain, fresh enough to glisten under the lights. I frowned. Great, a leak. But when I crouched down, I realized the floor underneath was dry. That stain had come from inside. A faint odor rose from it, damp, sweet, and metallic, like wet rust mixed with something rotten. I hesitated, hand hovering above the box. It was heavier than it should have been. Much heavier. When I tilted it slightly, something inside shifted with a soft thud. Scrape, thud. I froze. No one else was near my aisle. I could see straight down both ends, completely empty. I set the box on a flat card and reached for my box cutter. The tape peeled away with a dry crack. A whisper of movement came from inside. Then silence. I leaned closer. And that's when two tiny black eyes blinked back at me from a tear in the cardboard. Before I could react, two mice shot out, racing across my hand and vanishing behind the shelves. I stumbled backward, dropping the cutter, my heart hammering. Jesus. I laughed nervously, trying to calm down. Just mice. But the box still felt wrong. Something in me said, "Don't leave it here." I slid it onto the cart and started pushing toward the back room. The wheels squeaked against the linoleum, echoing through the empty aisles. With every push, the smell grew thicker, sour, and choking. Droppings fell from the seams. When I reached the stockroom, Marla, the overnight inventory clerk, looked up from her clipboard. Her gray hair was pulled into a tight bun, her expression permanently unimpressed. "What's that?" she asked. "Infested toy box," I said. "Smells like death." She wrinkled her nose but barely glanced at it. "Management won't like tossing inventory. Stick it in the damaged goods area until morning." "Marla, it's disgusting," I said. "We can't sell this." She sighed. "Then talk to Caldwell when he gets in. You know how he is. I knew Mr. Caldwell. The night manager, a man who measured everything in dollars. Not decency, so I waited. 45 minutes later, he strutted in, half awake, tie loose, coffee in hand. I told him everything. The smell, the rats, the mold. He barely blinked. "We can't just toss a $200 ride-on," he said. "Wipe it down, seal it, and put it on clearance." I stared at him. "It's a health hazard." He shrugged. "Protocol's protocol." I left it there, furious, disgusted, uneasy, but deep down, I knew he'd ignore me. The next evening, when I returned, my stomach dropped. The box was back on the shelf, retaped. Clearance sticker. Like nothing had ever happened. I felt heat rise to my face. Fine. If Caldwell wouldn't deal with it, I would. I grabbed my cutter and sliced through the tape. A gush of foul air hit me like a wall. I gagged, eyes watering. Inside, between torn plastic and cardboard scraps, lay a nest of bones and rot, the decomposed bodies of rats, their tiny skeletons tangled in filth. The stench of ammonia and decay clung to my throat. I stumbled back. "Oh my God!" Marla came running, covering her mouth. Caldwell followed, color draining from his face. No one spoke for a full minute. Finally, Caldwell muttered, "Get it out of here now." The janitorial crew arrived in full masks and gloves. They sealed the box in thick plastic and carried it to the dumpster. But even after it was gone, the smell lingered, and that aisle never felt the same again. A week later, I was restocking near the same section when the overhead lights flickered again. The hum of the air vents faltered, and in the silence that followed, I swore I heard scratching, soft, rhythmic, coming from behind the shelves. Probably pipes, I told myself. But the next night I heard it again. And this time, something small fell behind me. A toy car rolling slowly down the empty aisle until it stopped at my feet. I froze. There was no one there. When I turned back to the shelf where the Power Rider boxes had been, one of them was open, just slightly. The flap moved. Then, still, I left early that night. A month passed. I transferred to electronics to get as far from toys as possible. But the rumors started spreading. Customers complained about a terrible smell near the kids' section. Some said they saw movement behind the shelves, tiny shapes darting through the gaps. One mother claimed she heard whispering when she picked up a boxed car. Maintenance checked the vents, the wiring, everything. They found nothing. Then, 2 months later, the night janitor quit. He left a note on his locker that read, "Don't go near the toy aisle after midnight." It's still there. No one ever saw him again, even now, years later. I sometimes dream about that night, about the weight of that box, the sound of something shifting inside it before I knew what it was. And the smell, that sick, sweet smell that never really leaves you once you've breathed it in. I've worked dozens of jobs since then, but every time I walk into a department store, I can't help glancing toward the toy aisle, and I swear, sometimes, I catch the faint sound of wheels rolling across linoleum because Bright Mart was more than just a store. It was a reminder that even the most innocent places can rot from the inside. All it takes is one forgotten box, one thing sealed away and left to fester. And when you finally open it, you never know what might crawl out. I thought I'd seen everything on the night shift, until I watched a man die standing right in front of me, smiling. I used to work at a small grocery store called Shoppy's Market on the outskirts of Willow Creek, Oregon, the kind of place that never closed, even during snowstorms. If you've ever worked retail, you know night shifts feel different. The aisles seem longer, the shadows move when you're not looking, and the people who come in after midnight aren't the same people you see during the day. I'd been there almost 3 years, same routine, stock shelves, sweep floors, make small talk with the handful of regulars who wandered in for milk or cigarettes. Among them was an elderly couple everyone knew, Harold and Martha Denton. They came in every evening. Right before closing, Harold walked slowly, cane in hand, while Martha carried a little basket and hummed to herself. They bought the same things every time: bread, milk, 2 apples, and a newspaper. Something about them made the store feel human. But that comfort shattered one cold Thursday night. It was close to 11:30 p.m. The wind outside pushed against the glass doors, rattling the frames. The hum of the fluorescent lights felt louder than usual. Then I saw the Dentons through the window, walking up the ramp. Everything looked normal until Harold stopped halfway. He said something to Martha, reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet ring box. I remember thinking, how sweet, an anniversary gift. But then he did something that froze me. He opened the box, took out his wedding ring and placed it gently in Martha's palm. Her face changed, confusion, then fear. He smiled at her, a long, hollow smile. Then he turned and walked toward the benches near the door while she went inside. I scanned items for another customer, trying not to stare. But something about that gesture wouldn't leave my head. 15 minutes later, I was restocking the counter near the door when I heard a low cough, then another, deep and wet. I looked over. Harold was slumped forward on the bench, shaking. The sound wasn't like a normal cough, it was choking. I dropped the scanner and ran over. "Sir, are you okay?" He looked up at me, eyes wide, veins bulging in his neck. He tried to speak but only managed to gurgle. Blood bubbled from his lips. I shouted for help. Martha came running, groceries spilling from her hands. "Harold," she screamed. He coughed again. Harder, dark red splattering across his shirt. Then blood started seeping from his nose, his ears, and even his eyes. It was like his body was collapsing from the inside out. Customers screamed. Someone called 911. I remember holding his shoulder, trying to keep him upright, but he was trembling violently. Then, just like that, he stopped, still sitting, eyes open, smiling. The ambulance arrived within minutes, but he was already gone, dead, just sitting there, still warm. They covered him with a white sheet. The crimson stains kept spreading through the fabric. Martha was inconsolable. Rocking back and forth on the floor, she kept saying the same thing. He told me he didn't want to die at home. He said he'd rather die where people could see him. Her words hit me like ice. Had he planned this? After the paramedics left, the store closed for the first time in 10 years. The next morning, a cleanup team came in to sanitize the area, but the bench where he'd been sitting was removed entirely. Corporate said it was damaged. I didn't believe that. 2 nights later, I was alone again on shift. The front doors reflected my every move, the automatic lights flickering with each gust of wind. Around 2 a.m., I heard soft tapping near the entrance, 3 taps. Pause, then 3 more, like a cane hitting tile. I looked up. The glass doors were empty, but faintly, in the reflection, I saw a man's outline, sitting on the bench that wasn't there anymore. I blinked, and the shape vanished. The hum of the lights filled the silence again. I told myself it was exhaustion. That's what you do on night shifts. You explain things away. But over the next week, strange things kept happening. Martha came back to the store twice. Both times she only stood near the entrance, staring at the empty space where the bench had been. She never bought anything. She never spoke. Just stood there, whispering under her breath. I couldn't make out the words. The third time I walked up to her. "Ma'am, are you all right?" She looked at me, eyes sunken and rimmed with red. "He's still here," she whispered. Then she smiled, almost the same smile Harold had before he died. That night, when I went to restock aisle 5, the intercom crackled to life. A faint male voice whispered through the static, "Martha, come home." I froze. The store was empty. I pulled out my radio. Dead silence. The intercom hissed once more, then cut off. I called the manager on duty. No answer. When I returned to the front, the automatic doors had opened on their own. Cold air flooded in. Outside, under the orange streetlight, I saw a figure walking away slowly, cane tapping the ground. I should have chased after it. But I couldn't move. Every instinct screamed that if I followed, I wouldn't come back. The next day, the district manager ordered the doors replaced and the intercom system checked for interference. Nothing unusual was found. They gave me a week off to process the incident. When I came back, I noticed something new. Right where the old bench had been, someone had placed a small wooden memorial plaque. No one admitted to installing it. The plaque read, "In memory of those who find peace where they stand." Every night since, that spot has felt colder than the rest of the store. Thermal sensors glitch near it. Sometimes, I'll hear soft tapping when the aisles are empty. Always 3 times. Always from behind me. It's been 4 years since that night. I still work at Shoppies. A different shift now. Daylight only. But sometimes when I stay late to help close, I'll glance at the security monitors. And in the grainy footage of the front entrance, I'll see a faint shape sitting exactly where that bench used to be. Just a man, sitting still, waiting. He never moves. He never fades. But every few seconds, his reflection tilts its head and smiles. The shelf didn't fall on its own. Something wanted it to. I'd been working nights at Pet Haven Supercenter for about 8 months, long enough to stop noticing the smell of kibble and disinfectant that clung to everything. We were open 24/7 in Ridgewood, Nevada, a lonely stretch of road where nothing ever happened after midnight. That night was an exception. It started just after 2 a.m. The store was silent except for the hum of the freezer units and the faint squeak of my cartwheels. I was restocking the litter aisle, endless brown boxes, stacked floor to ceiling. That aisle always gave me a strange feeling. The lights there buzzed louder, flickering every few seconds, like the bulbs were holding their breath. My boss, Mr. Keller, had just come in for his nightly inspection. He was tall and heavy-set, the kind of man who believed volume equaled authority. He stomped up behind me, clipboard in hand. "A new shipment came in," he said. 8 pallets of catguard litter. Get it up top before 3. I froze. Up top meant the new steel high-rise shelves, the ones every employee whispered about. They'd been installed 2 weeks earlier after corporate's latest efficiency project, and everyone knew they weren't stable. "Sir," I said carefully, "those racks bend under weight. We should spread it out." He cut me off. "They're rated for 1,000 pounds. You want to test that? Get moving." Arguing with Keller was pointless, so I did as told. Each box weighed nearly 55 pounds. My arms ached as I lifted them one by one, sliding them onto the top shelf. The metal groaned with each new box. Halfway through, I heard a deep creak that rattled through the beams. I paused. The sound stopped. I looked down the aisle. Empty. The security cameras blinked red. Recording silently, I told myself it was nothing. By 2:45 a.m., I had almost completed my task. The air felt heavier, like the shelves themselves were exhaling. I reached for the final box and the entire unit shuddered. A low, metallic snap echoed, followed by another. Then, before I could even step back, everything collapsed. The shelves folded like paper. A wall of boxes crashed down, knocking me backward. Pain exploded through my shoulder as I hit the floor. I remember the deafening sound, metal twisting, litter bursting open, and the choking storm of dust that filled my lungs. I tried to yell, but the weight pinned me. My flashlight rolled away, its beam cutting across the aisle. Through the haze, I saw movement, a pair of boots stopping just out of reach. "Help," I gasped. "Please," it was Keller. He stared at me, face pale, jaw tight. For a second I thought he'd grab me. Instead, he hissed, "Don't move. Don't say a word." Then he turned and shouted to the others at the far end of the store, "Everything's fine. Just a spill." I couldn't believe it. He didn't want a 911 call, not because he cared, but because corporate would ask why the shelves failed. He left me there. I clawed at the boxes, scraping my hands raw, until I freed myself enough to breathe. The room spun, dust coated my mouth. When I finally crawled out, Keller was gone. I stumbled to the break room and collapsed. My coworker Janine found me minutes later, blood running down my arm. She screamed. And that's when the paramedics were finally called. Not by management, but by her. The hospital said I'd fractured 2 ribs and dislocated my shoulder. Corporate sent flowers and a short letter thanking me for my dedication. Keller called once, only to remind me to keep the incident quiet. I ignored him. 2 months later, I filed a safety report with photos, witness statements, everything. When the investigation began, Keller's confidence cracked. He stammered through every question. The footage showed the shelves bowing hours before the collapse. He'd ignored multiple employee warnings. He was laid off. But somehow, that didn't make me feel better. Strange. Things began to happen after he was fired. Returned to work a few weeks later. Corporate had replaced the entire litter aisle with new shelving. It looked perfect, shiny, stable, safe. But when I walked past it on my first night back, a chill ran up my spine. The lights above that aisle still flickered. Every time I rolled my cart through, the motion sensors triggered late, like the store didn't recognize me anymore, and occasionally, I'd hear a faint creak overhead. The sound was not loud enough to be mechanical. It was soft, almost like breathing. Janine refused to go near that section after midnight. She said she kept hearing knocking sounds and boxes shifting even when no one was there. One night she told me, "I swear the shelves are swaying again." I laughed nervously, but later, when I checked the camera feed, she wasn't lying. The footage showed the boxes trembling rhythmically, like something moving behind them. A few nights later, around 3 a.m., I was finishing cleanup when the intercom buzzed to life. Static. Then a faint male voice whispered, "Nobody call 911, My body went cold. It was Keller's voice. It was the same exact words he'd uttered the night the shelves collapsed. Ran to the office. The intercom was off. The manager on duty swore she hadn't touched it. We replayed the recording logs. Nothing. Not a single transmission. That same night, the power flickered 3 times and died for exactly 47 seconds. When the lights came back on, one of the new shelves had tilted forward just an inch, but enough to make every box lean. Maintenance blamed foundation settling. I didn't. 3 weeks later, Keller showed up. He wasn't supposed to be there. Corporate had banned him from the property, but security cameras caught him standing outside. The glass doors at 2:13 a.m. He just stared through the window, his reflection flickering with the lights. He didn't move for 10 minutes. Then he turned and walked into the dark parking lot. The next day, police found his car in a ravine 5 miles away. No signs of struggle. The engine was still running. The driver's door is wide open. They said it looked like he'd stepped out. Mid-drive. Nobody was ever found. Thereafter, things at Pet Haven got worse. Customers started reporting strange noises from the litter aisle, boxes falling with no one around, or a whisper that seemed to echo from the top shelves. The night crew began quitting one by one. Within 3 months, there were only 2 of us left. One evening, I went in to finish the inventory alone. The lights flickered as usual. I stacked the final box and turned to leave. Then came the sound. The deep, groaning metal that had haunted my dreams. Creak. Snap. I spun around. Nothing moved. The air was dead still. But when I looked up, I saw handprints. Greasy, dust-smeared prints trailing along the highest beam. The handprints were too high for anyone to reach without a ladder. I backed away slowly, my breath fogging in the cold air. Then the intercom clicked again. Nobody call 911. Boxes began to tremble. Dust rained down like ash. I ran. As I hit the corner of the aisle, one of the shelves buckled again, just slightly, then froze mid-collapse, as if something invisible was holding it. I didn't stop running until I was in my car. I quit the next morning. Corporate tried to convince me to stay, offered a raise, even a transfer. But I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the metal bending. I smelled the dust. I felt the weight. They shut that Pet Haven down last year. Structural failure, the news said. No injuries. No mention of Keller. But occasionally, I drive past the empty lot at night. The streetlights buzz faintly over the cracked sign that still says Pet Haven. And through the broken windows, I swear I see shadows climbing the shelves that shouldn't exist anymore, because maybe it wasn't the shelves that collapsed that night. Maybe something else was trying to come out. It wasn't the blood on the walls that scared me most. It was realizing the lights kept turning on from inside after we'd locked the door. I worked the graveyard shift at Shopmore Supercenter in Carson Valley, California. If you've ever done nights in retail, you know that after midnight, the world outside disappears. The hum of fluorescent lights becomes your heartbeat. Every sound feels amplified. Carts squeaking, vents breathing, footsteps that aren't always yours. Most nights were dull, a few late shoppers, the usual cleanup, nothing strange. Until the night Rena and Dale came in, I'll never forget them. They were regulars, unpredictable, loud, the kind of customers who made security earn their pay. They always came after 10 p.m., wandering the aisles like they were lost in some other world. But that night, they were worse. They burst through the doors screaming at each other, slurred words, shaking hands, wild eyes. I could smell the alcohol and something stronger. "Hey, hey," our guard Tim shouted, trying to calm them down. But they ignored him. Their fight echoed through the store, about drugs, money, and betrayal. Every shopper froze. Even the music cut off mid-song. Tim signaled the second guard. They closed in, ready to escort the pair out, but Rena suddenly shrieked, "You're not taking it from me." Then both of them bolted straight toward the back restrooms. We just stood there, stunned. Usually, troublemakers yell and storm off. They don't lock themselves inside. A second later, we heard the disabled stall door slam, then the noises. Began banging, screaming, the sound of something heavy crashing. Against the walls could be heard. The sound was so guttural that it didn't seem human. Tim pounded on the door. "Open up, now!" There was no response, only a muffled shriek and the sound of running water. The pipes rattled. Then silence. Minutes passed like hours. Finally, the lock clicked. The door creaked open a few inches. Rena stepped out first, pale, trembling, eyes glassy. Behind her, Dale followed, moving like he was half asleep. Both of them were covered in sweat. Neither said a word. They just walked past us, fast, and ran through the exit. The smell that came from the restroom hit us next. Rotten. Thick, chemical. Tim gagged. "I'm not going in there," he muttered. But procedure demanded we check. He pushed the door wider, flashlight in hand. A second later, he stumbled back, one hand over his mouth, face white as chalk. He didn't speak, just pointed inside. So I went in. It looked like a nightmare painted across tile. The mirror was smeared with a dark, unclear substance. Brown, red, impossible to tell. Paper towels stuck to the ceiling like claws. Chunks of fabric. Clothes. Maybe, shredded across the floor and written on the mirror. Faintly traced with a finger. "Don't let them in." The stench was unbearable, metallic, sour, and human. I backed out. Heart pounding. Tim radioed for janitorial and called management. When the cleaners arrived, they wore full hazmat gear. Even they came out shaking. They said there was blood mixed with excrement on the walls, like someone had gone completely feral. No one understood how two people could make that kind of mess in 10 minutes. The next morning, the corporation ordered full sanitation. The restroom was scrubbed, repainted and deodorized, but the smell never really left. That's when staff started calling it the cursed stall. For weeks, no one used it. Even customers avoided it. The motion sensor light inside would flicker randomly, always after 2 a.m. Maintenance replaced the bulbs. The wiring and even the entire fixture still flickered. Then, the whispers began. One cashier swore she heard crying coming from the stall when the restroom was empty. Another claimed she saw 2 sets of feet through, the gap under the door, bare, dirty, and motionless. Security footage once showed the restroom door opening at 3:17 a.m., but no one walked out. 2 months later, Rena came back alone. She looked different, thinner, twitchy, with eyes darting around. She went straight to the back. Tim stopped her. "Ma'am, you can't go in there." She smiled, a wide, unnatural smile. "I left something inside," she whispered. Then she laughed, a low, broken laugh, and walked out before anyone could stop her. That night, when we reviewed cameras, the feed glitched for exactly 10 seconds at 3:17 a.m., the same minute as the footage from before. When it resumed, the restroom light was on again. A few weeks later, maintenance worker Luis volunteered to repaint the disabled stall one last time. He was tough, ex-military. Nothing scared him. He went in whistling. 15 minutes later, his whistle stopped. We found him sitting on the floor inside, staring at the mirror. The paint roller beside him dripped red, but the paint can was white. His hands were shaking. He said he'd heard someone breathing behind him. When he turned, the reflection in the mirror wasn't his. It was a woman, pale, with hollow eyes and a smile that didn't move with her face. Luis quit that night. He didn't even pick up his last paycheck. Thereafter, management permanently sealed the disabled stall, bolted it shut, hung a maintenance-only sign that's still there today. But sometimes, late at night, you can see light leaking through the crack under the door. And if you listen closely, you'll hear faint dripping, like water from a faucet that was never turned off. The janitor who replaced Louis swears he hears whispers every time he mops that hallway. He says a woman's voice keeps repeating, "Don't let them in." He stopped working nights after that. A few months later, police found Dale's body near the riverbank outside town. They said overdose. But what made headlines wasn't how he died. It was what was written on his arm in smudged black marker. We opened the door. No one knows what that means, but after that discovery, corporate shut down that Shopmore location for renovations. It reopened 6 months later under a new name, Freshmart Plus. Same building, same walls, same restroom. The new crew never heard the story, at least not from me. But when I drove by last week, curiosity got the better of me. I stopped, pretending to shop, and when I walked toward the back hallway, my heart sank. The maintenance stall, it was open again. Light spilling out onto the floor. There was no one inside. As I turned to leave, the motion sensor flicked the light off, then back on. And on the mirror, clear as day, someone had written 3 words in fresh condensation. Still here, waiting. It's been years since I worked at Shopmore, but I still dream about that night. About Rena's smile, about Dale's frantic eyes, about the smell that clung to my clothes no matter how many times I washed them. Sometimes in the middle of the night, I'll wake up and swear I hear that faint dripping sound from my bathroom, always at 3:17 a.m., always followed by a whisper at my ear. Soft, familiar, impossible, don't let them in. Sometimes the monsters at work don't hide in the dark. They wear name tags. I spent 7 years working nights at a grocery chain called Grandfield Market in Maple Hollow, Kansas. The pay wasn't great, but it was steady. Over time, those aisles started to feel like home, a cold, humming kind of home lit by endless fluorescent light. I began in backstock, stacking cereal boxes and sweeping spilled sugar. Eventually, I worked my way up to department manager for the pharmacy section. It felt like survival, not success. At Grandfield, the management was more interested in what you produced than who you were. Even so, I tried to be decent. I said good morning, asked people how they were. These little gestures helped make the night shift feel less empty. That's probably why Lucas Evan Grant liked me. Lucas was 23. He had mild Down syndrome and worked as a maintenance associate, the one with the mop, always smiling. Always trying too hard. Corporate had hired him under a community program, but everyone knew it was just for a tax credit. Still, Lucas showed up every single night, uniform pressed, shoes polished. He believed this place was his dream job. When the rest of us were dead-eyed and exhausted, he'd hum songs under his breath while cleaning. He called the store his second home, and somehow, that made me want to protect him. It was a Tuesday when everything fell apart. I was counting down the final hour of my shift when Angela, one of the cashiers, ran up, pale and breathless. "You need to come to the back," she said. "It's Lucas. The managers are yelling at him." I didn't hesitate. As I neared the break room hallway, I could already hear it, raised voices, cruel and sharp. When I turned the corner, I froze. 4 managers, Kurt, Shelley, Martin, and Craig, were standing over Lucas like a pack of wolves. He was on the floor, arms covering his head, crying. Kurt's voice cut through the air. "I told you your break ended 15 minutes ago. You think you're special?" Shelley snorted. "Maybe he doesn't understand clocks." Martin laughed. "Or maybe he's just lazy." Each word hit like a slap. Lucas whimpered something. An apology, maybe. Craig kicked his mop aside. "Get up, you're done here." Something in me snapped. "Enough," I shouted. The hallway went silent. All 4 turned to look at me, eyes narrowing. Kurt sneered. "Stay out of this. He's not your responsibility." "The hell he isn't," I said, stepping forward. "He's a human being. You don't talk to anyone like that." For a moment, no one moved. Then Kurt muttered something under his breath and walked off. The others followed, leaving me and Lucas alone. He was trembling. His face was blotched red from crying. I knelt beside him. "Hey, you're okay. You didn't do anything wrong." Between sobs, he explained what happened. He'd misread his schedule and taken his break too early. That was it. That was all it took to bring the cruelty out of them. I told him not to worry, that I'd report everything. He hugged me tightly, whispering, "Thank you." I wish that had been the end of it. The next morning, corporate sent out an internal memo. Effective immediately, employee number 4531. Lucas E. Grant has been terminated for AR violation of company policy regarding breaks and insubordination. Couldn't believe it. They'd laid him off, and none of the managers involved were even mentioned. I called HR. They said the case was closed. No appeal, no discussion. When Lucas came in to pick up his final check, he looked broken. Eyes dull, shoulders slumped. He didn't speak to anyone. He just left his key card on the counter and walked out. I stood there, helpless. A kid who wanted nothing but to belong had just been erased from this place like he never existed. That night, I wrote my resignation letter, but before I could send it, something happened that still keeps me up at night. Around midnight, the power flickered. We were short-staffed, so I went to check the back hallway, the same one where it happened. The lights there always buzzed a little, but that night they were completely dead. Just darkness. As I walked in, my phone flashlight caught something on the floor. Wet footprints, bare feet, small. They trailed from the maintenance closet to the break room door. "Hello?" I called out, no answer. Then from inside the closet came a slow tapping. Mop against tile, 3 taps, pause, 3 more. This behavior was similar to what Lucas used to do when he was nervous. "Lucas," I whispered. The tapping stopped. Silence. Then a whisper, faint, almost carried on the air itself. "It's cold." My chest tightened. I yanked open the closet door. Nothing. Just a mop bucket, dripping water onto the floor, but the handle was swaying like someone had just let go. I backed away slowly, heart pounding, and that's when the lights flicked back on. The hallway was empty, but on the wall, drawn in a shaky wet streak, were 2 words, "Help me." I ran. The next day, I finally turned in my resignation. Kurt smirked as I handed it over. "Couldn't handle the heat, huh?" I didn't answer, but when I looked at him, his hands were trembling slightly. I noticed faint red marks around his wrist, like scratches. That night, I dreamed of the mop closet. The water is pooling at my feet. Lucas was standing there, eyes wide, whispering the same 2 words. When I woke up, my phone had a voicemail from an unknown number, static. Then, softly, "It's cold." A week later, news broke that Kurt Dawson, the store's lead manager, was found dead in the supply lot behind Grandfield. Officially, it was a workplace accident, a fall from the loading dock, but those who saw the scene said something else. The mop bucket from the maintenance closet was lying beside him. The water, inside, was tinted red. Corporate shut the store down for 3 days. When it reopened, no one mentioned Lucas. His name vanished from schedules, employee lists, and payroll. It was as if he never existed. But the night shift workers whispered. They said if you stayed past 3 a.m., you'd hear footsteps in that hallway, light, hurried, nervous. Occasionally a mop would roll out on its own. Occasionally you'd find puddles forming where no leaks existed. And always, just before the lights flickered, a faint voice would whisper from the dark, "It's cold." I left Grandfield Market 3 years ago, but the memory never left me. I still see Lucas's face when I close my eyes. I still feel the guilt that I couldn't save him. I work days now. Different store, different town, but every time I pass a maintenance closet, I glance inside, and sometimes, only sometimes, I swear I see a small set of wet footprints leading out the door. They always stop right behind me.